Please welcome Robb Wolf.
Thank you. Okay, sure. So with an introduction like that, I feel like I should be taller than 5'9", but huge honor to be here. So my background a little bit, I was a research biochemist in the areas of autoimmunity and cancer research. And I had a pretty serious health crisis in my mid-20s. I had so many wacky poo-related issues that my doctors thought that I needed a bowel resection. I had high blood pressure, altered triglycerides. I was a mess. And I was the ripe old age of about 26, 27 years old. And I honestly thought I was going to die. And then this, through kind of an interesting set of circumstances, this idea of an ancestral diet, a paleo diet, got on my radar. Short story is that it completely changed my life. I've been kind of promulgating that pseudoscience for the last almost 20 years. Seems to have been pretty successful with folks. But when I first launched into this whole process, I was very, it may be a surprise, I'm kind of like an engineer, biochemist by trade. I was kind of a dick in the way that I approached things. I was like, here's how you do it. Arthur Murray dance school deal, put your right foot here, put your left foot there, boom, 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 go along. And I couldn't figure out why people hit some sort of a logjam, why they couldn't just keep doing what it was that I asked them to do. Diet and lifestyle changes are kind of cool in that you can try them on like a sweater. You know, you try it on, you're like, oh, I look pretty good in that. I like that. We get pretty immediate feedback, 30 days. We've got some sort of a sense of, is this working for me? Is it not? And so it was always intriguing and also frustrating for me that when I would try to help folks, that there was some sort of a sticking point, some sort of a logjam. And then as I got out of the process of being focused on myself and my own thoughts about the way that people should approach this, I started actually saying, what's going on with that person? And I started asking some questions around their process. So how many folks in here are coaches, healthcare providers? Quite a few, quite a few. So I think that this will be valuable for everybody, I hope so, but it'll be particularly valuable, I think, for the people who help coach other people, and hopefully you can shave a couple of decades off of your coaching strategy so that you start looking to the person that you're working with and meet them where they are. It took me an enormous amount of time to learn that very simple lesson, and I could have helped a lot more people had I been more effective with that. My whole, I guess, kitsch here, story, is that we should not be surprised that living in our modern world is challenging, that navigating our food, our health environment, we should not be surprised by that at all. One of the biggest challenges that I got from people when I really sat down with them and kind of felt what was going on with them was that people felt a profound sense of guilt because they found that what they were doing was difficult. They saw other people, every once in a while, we all know these people, they can eat anything they want, they can do whatever they want, they stay up late. Everybody has like an Uncle Charlie somewhere that like smoked and drank and chased women into his 90s. I'm not that Uncle Charlie. If I did that, I would be dead in my 30s. So I'm hoping that what I can share with you all today is this idea that it's not your fault. It's not your client's fault. If you are struggling with what we're trying to do today to be healthy and to live a good life, should not be surprising. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have hard work to do, but at least if we can diffuse some of that guilt, some of that drama around this process, hopefully then we can move forward and make some better choices. So most of the problems that folks are concerned with tends to be weight and health related, also some performance and longevity. But these are, would you guys agree, this is most of what folks are concerned with. And would you find it unreasonable to say that most of the weight and health issues are probably related to the food we eat, maybe the amount of food that we eat? Pretty big deal. We're going to talk about sleep and exercise and some other stuff, but that's really kind of a big deal. So just think about that a little bit. Okay, so check this thing out. Can you guys see what's going on there? So we have a European-style outlet, we have an American-style plug, and then we have 2 toenail clippers. And who travels with 2 toenail clippers? Like, you know. So the way I found this image, I put into Google Images wrong way to fix a problem. And this is what popped up, okay? So now keep this idea of wrong way to fix a problem in mind as we go through a little bit more material here. So I would suggest that this might be a problem. This is from a NASDAQ article looking at adult obesity rates in the United States. It's on an exponential growth curve. It's going up and up and up. The Congressional Budget Office, which is a pretty nonpartisan outfit that does statistical analysis for the government, projects that by 2030, we will spend 300% of GDP on diabetes-related issues alone. That means we take every nickel, dime, and penny of productivity that this country has, multiply it by 3, and it just goes to dealing with diabetes-related issues. That's not $1 spent on education, filling a pothole, building a bridge. That seems like a problem. This is projected cases of type 2 diabetes. Similar growth trend. We have these exponential growth trends going on. Type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's disease. Again, exponential growth trends. Now let me ask you this question. How many of you folks, is your smartphone in your pocket, is it faster and better than the one that you had 5 years ago? Yeah, a lot. Is it cheaper? Maybe, maybe. When you look at what it can do relative to what it costs, in general, this stuff is faster and better. Do we have more information at our fingertips about cancer and diabetes and Parkinson's and heart disease than we've ever had in history? Yes. In 2013, there were 30,000 peer-reviewed articles that you could find on PubMed related to type 2 diabetes. We have more information at our fingertips than we've ever had in history, but yet all of these trends are going up, and they're going up not a little bit, they're going up at exponential rates. So we're solving the problem the wrong way. And I would argue that there are two really clear key factors that are at the root of the way that we are solving this problem the wrong way. First one, how many folks have seen that? Eat less, move more. Isn't that just so intuitively obvious? Hey, if you're having some health problems, most of the health problems that we face, and we'll talk a little bit about like the protein, carb, fat, macronutrient wars in a little bit, but and you know, is a calorie, we'll talk about that stuff a little bit, but in general, this is kind of the thing that we're told, right? Eat less, move more. That should be the solution. There's a related solution that we're told to embrace: everything in moderation, right? These things are so obvious. Come on, just get with the program. Eat less, move more, everything in moderation, and you'll be fine. If you can't do this, you're a failure. You're morally weak, you're flawed. Let me ask you this. How do you do moderation there? I'm not really that into sweets, but the chip aisle, that is a hooker and cocaine binge for me. Like, swipe my credit card. Next time you find me, my underwear's on my head, and I'm like passed out under the counter over here. Maybe the salty stuff isn't your thing. Can you do moderation there? Can you eat less, move more there? I have a few people saying, yeah, I can. Well, you are the rare folks. I can't do that. And when we look at our modern rates of degenerative disease, nobody can do that stuff. There's two places where eat less, move more, and everything in moderation works. The first place is here. It's called a metabolic ward. A metabolic ward is basically prison without the shower perks. Wait for it. Yeah. So you sign people up on this program, you take them in. Every bit of food that they eat is weighed and measured, and anything that they don't eat is also quantified. They poo in a container, and it's analyzed for carbon and nitrogen content. They pee in a jug. It's incredibly expensive, but in metabolic ward settings, eat less, move more works. Because you are effectively in prison, you can't sneak any extra food into your system, and so we can basically modify people's intake because there's no way for them to cheat the system. There's one other place that eat less, move more, and everything in moderation works. Right there. God, I love that show. So we are told this constantly: eat less, move more, everything in moderation, and you're going to be fine. Is that working? Now, let me ask you, I'm leading you along here. Do you guys agree that that is generally the recommendation that we get from the dietetics establishment, the medical establishment? Just eat less, move more. Everything in moderation, right? It is failing. It is failing us, and I would say that it is setting us up for massive failure, and it's setting us up because we head into this moral dilemma about why am I the one person that can't do this? But you are not the one person. This is everybody. This is our state as humans. So, everybody remember airplane? Yeah. Just a little statistical stuff. About 180 million people a year in the US try a diet, 4 to 5 times a year typically. Most of the time they fail. By failure, it means they don't stick with it long term, they don't reach the goals that they are endeavoring towards. In 2009, 220,000 morbidly obese people had gastric bypass. The average cost for that is $15,000 to $35,000. And I could go on and on and on with all kinds of statistics like this. We're trying, but we're really not doing the right things, and we're not setting people up for success. Every once in a while, we ask the question, why? But usually the why relates to some sense of morality, some sense of fundamental failure. People get this idea that at a core level, we are just flawed. Now, I will actually make an argument here that there is some element to being human woven into our genetics, woven into our evolutionary past, that makes our modern world challenging, but it's not a failure, but it may be a liability at this point. But it's a very different perspective than what we usually look at. We are told that we lack moral fiber. If we could just be better, if we could just be better people, make better decisions, everything would be okay. But clearly that's not what is happening. Maybe we're just lazy. Are we just lazy? If we were more motivated, if we could work a little harder, maybe everything would be okay. Again, I'm going to sell you that this idea of laziness is baked in the cake. Being lazy is the reason why our species is here today. And I'm going to show you my take on why that is here in just a moment. And this has turned into a state now of fat shaming that is absolutely preposterous. The fat shaming that occurs with people, and it's almost a cottage industry now, that some people have carved out in making people feel bad about failing in this modern world, is one of the most repugnant things I've ever seen in my life. It is appalling. Now, we still, if we want to change what's happening with us, we need to modify what we're doing. But blaming people for simply being human is, in my opinion, not the right way to go. Occasionally, we start asking some more quantifiable questions, like, do we eat too many carbohydrates? And man, the last 60 years has been this thing called what I call the macronutrient wars, where we try to find this magical, perfect ratio of protein, carbs, fat, where the angels will sing and everything is right, and it's the golden Da Vinci Code ratio of protein, carbs, fat. It doesn't exist. We have ancestral models of people who ate very, very low amounts of carbohydrate. The Inuit near the Arctic Circle eat virtually no carbohydrate throughout the course of a year or their lifetime, and historically they have been virtually free of modern degenerative disease. Until they start adding in modern refined foods, then we start seeing problems. On the other side, we have the Catawbans, who eat an almost 70% carbohydrate diet, again from unrefined carbohydrate sources, and they are similarly devoid of modern degenerative disease until they start eating modern refined foods. So I will say that depending on who you are, what your gut biome is, what your birth history was, were you breastfed, were you vaginally birthed, how early did you get antibiotics, playing off the last talk, that can set up a vector for you being more or less carb tolerant. I tend to be in the shallow end of the gene pool with regards to carb tolerance. I need to eat pretty low carb if I want to have good metabolic health, but that's not everybody. That's something that I've had to figure out on my own. But there's a reality that we have great examples of cultures that eat both high carb and low carb and are very healthy. The thing that ends up getting them is when we get into refined foods. Now, occasionally, somebody asks a really good question. They say, are we eating too many calories? And I would say that that's probably a yes, but why are we eating too many calories? Why are we specifically eating too many calories, whereas these traditional cultures are not? And that really starts getting at the crux of the matter. This is really interesting. What this is the amount of calories per person available in the food system over time. Look at how much more opportunity that we have than what we've had in the past. And this really gets at the crux of what I want to share with you guys today. I would say that our primary problem is novelty. We have too many food options. And these food options are amazing. We have some amazing food options out there. Some of the vendors are going to want to get like a Tony Soprano and part me up and throw me out in a garbage bag, and that's not really what I'm talking about. But what I'm going to sell you guys on, the greasy used car salesman pitch that I'm going to share with you today, is that this novelty concept is really at the heart of the challenge that we face. American supermarkets stock over 50,000 items. There's about 11,000 new food and food-like items that are introduced each year. So here is my greasy used car salesman pitch. You guys ready for this? The forces that made us who we are may be working against us today. How does that feel on a gut level for you? Does that seem reasonable? Like, whenever anybody is sharing something with you, I think that like kind of running it both through a gut level and an intellect level and kind of getting the hound dog, radar up, like, is there anything crazy there? Is this person trying to sell me on something that's non-transparent? This is it. We've been incredibly successful as a species, but we're starting to run into some problems, and the things that formed us as a species, I think, are working against us today. There's two really main concepts that are connected here. This one concept of optimum foraging strategy, which I'll talk about a little bit more here in a little bit, is basically obtain as many calories and nutrients as possible, doing as little as possible. Now let's think about a critter other than ourselves living out in the natural environment. Can that critter run over hill and dale, burning more calories and nutrients than what it obtains in the process of seeking that food out for an extended period of time? You burn more than what you get. Let me couch this a different way. Can you spend more money than you make and end up in a good position for a very long time? No. And this is basic kind of thermodynamics, economics applied to evolutionary biology and nature. By hook or by crook, every organism on the planet needs to get more energy and nutrients than what it burns, or it's going to die. Okay? That's fundamental point number one. And this is baked in the cake. What this means is that evolutionarily, naturally, however you want to look at this, we are wired up to eat more and move less. That is baked in the cake. It can't be any other way. Everybody with me on that? If it were different, none of us would be here. No organism that's tried the alternate route, eat less, move more, is here because it ran out of energy and died. So this other piece that's really important is something called palate fatigue, and it's a juxtaposition against this optimum foraging strategy. What it implies is that no matter how tasty or delectable a food item is that we have in front of us, we will get bored with it and we want to seek out other items. The reason why we want to seek out those other items is that we minimize toxins in the food and we also optimize the nutrient variety that we get. We may get something that's super tasty, really amazing, but if we ate exclusively that one item, unless we're like a koala bear that eats eucalyptus or some of these super specialized critters, which we are not, then we will end up in a nutrient deficient state. So we have these two kind of dueling banjos of optimum foraging strategy, eat as many things as you can, burning as little as possible, and then palate fatigue, which is a sense that we will burn out on too much of a given item and we seek out novel, new experiences with our food. So we have great wiring, but we have horrible timing. Novelty involves ancient areas of the brain that deal with sex and reproduction and survival. This is why we can try to logic ourselves out of a situation all that we want, but then we keep making the same mistakes again and again. Because we're not dealing with the logical part of the brain, we're dealing with the emotional part of the brain that causes us, when we see our child running out into the street and there's a car coming towards them, we dash and get that child without a moment's thought because that is survival. It is instinct. We are not dealing with a part of the brain that we can logically control without significant practice. And so this is part of the reason why we should not be surprised that this is all a challenging process. And again, kind of a greasy used car salesman part 2 piece. If we understand where we come from, we can understand who we are. Does that seem reasonable? And I think this chicken deal is just like, holy cats, wow. So here's a proposition. Now, if this is good, then everybody's going to be like, this is amazing. And if this thing flops, then 90% of you are going to get up and walk out the door. So here we go. We'll see how it goes. If you are fat, sick, and broken, you are a success story. You've done nothing wrong. You've done everything right. Why? Optimum foraging strategy, what does that mean? Eat more, move less. Palate fatigue, what does that imply? I got bored with the Rice Krispies, so I moved on to the nachos. Right? That is our modern situation. That is our current dilemma. So, you're the result of 4 billion years of evolutionary success. And I'll save the last part. So you're liberated. Woohoo, we're free. We understand why our situation is hard. Optimum foraging strategy says that we need to eat more, move less. Palate fatigue implies the reason why we can't not eat the next item, eat all the foods, right? So that's it. Okay, we'll see you guys later. Let's go have a drink. Okay, so we still have a little bit of work to do. This is still our current situation. I love this quote, and I've tried to do fact-checking on it, but the fact-checking circuits apparently are maxed out right now, so I can't really do anything with that. Even the knowledge of my own fallibility cannot keep me from making mistakes. Only when I fall do I get back up again. It's that simple. And this is something that I try to share with our clients. I'm on the board of directors of a medical clinic in Reno, Nevada. And one of the greatest challenges that we face is letting people know that if they're trying to make a change, let's say they deviated off whatever it was that they were supposed to be doing with food, with exercise, or what have you, if they deviated away from their food, how far away are they from getting back on course? 1 meal. They're 1 meal away. That's it. And so we need to understand that, and you know, sometimes these digressions off into the weeds are very informative. I'm super gluten reactive, and I wasn't sold on it initially. I love beer. Oh God, I love beer. And then the 4th or 5th or 10th or 20th time that I had a beer, and then whatever bathroom I hit needed a priest and an exorcism, and they bricked it off afterwards. I was like, okay, I'm a slow study, but beer and gluten are definitely not working for me. So this is a really powerful thing that we can, again, and it's almost a bit of a Zen process. We do need to use our logical part of our brain to get in touch with the emotive portion of our brain and start intercepting that derailing process, that self-sabotage. And it can be done. It takes work. It takes work just like anything else, just like exercise, like learning a language, but it's something that can be done. So key point number 1, I talked about this before, optimum foraging strategy. These models argue that an organism will select the nutrients that give the greatest benefit for the least energy. We've talked about that quite a bit. The take home, we are genetically wired to get as many calories, nutrients as possible, doing as little as possible. And again, I think, don't think about people for a minute, because we're so immersed in technology and consistent food supplies and whatnot. Think about a bear or a wild cat or any other type of animal in the wild. They need to get more nutrition out of their environment than what they spend getting it, or they're going to have a problem. Key point number 2, novelty and palate fatigue are critical. The strategy of Paleolithic foragers was to eat small amounts of various foods to decrease the impact of toxins, poisons, or pathogens. Even blueberries have toxicants in them, okay? Everything in biology has thorns or horns or teeth or poison or something to defend itself. This is grains are a great example of this, and this is part of the reason why gluten-containing grains tend to be particularly problematic. Gluten and gliadin are anti-predation chemicals. They cause problems for a lot of the critters that eat them. Everybody's familiar with poison oak, poison ivy, poison sumac? Those are anti-predation chemicals. Doesn't work on everything, but it works on a lot of stuff. And most of the foods that we consume have some degree of these anti-predation chemicals in there. Luther Burbanking of our food in the 1940s, 1950s made them large and sweet and more palatable. And what it did largely is decrease the amount of natural toxicants that exist in foods. Now what do we need to do with those foods to keep them from being eaten by pests? Spray them with pesticides, yeah. Eating a variety of foods makes it more likely the species will get a balanced diet. I think that you guys kind of intuit that. Boredom is literally baked in the cake. It is necessary for us to get bored with certain foods. Palate fatigue, a sensory-specific satiety and monotony assured the consumption of a varied diet. If you had a lot of one food in front of you, got bored with it, and I'm going to show you a really just like knock your socks off example of this in just a second. But this forced us, even if we had a lot of one type of food on hand, to go seek out other foods to get that variety. And a really key take-home here, and particularly for the folks coaching people, it's really hard to overeat simple foods. And this is a strategy that I use to try to affect this. It's called the food matrix. So I had a client one day that walked into the gym. And this is kind of a funny sideline. Hopefully I have time to share it. I'll try to jam it out. This gal's name was Lisa, L-Y-S-S-A. And she came in and she's like, I'm just bored. I'm like, bored? What do you mean bored? She's like, I'm bored with this food. I just started losing my mind. And so I got up on the chalkboard. So I wrote a bunch of proteins. We have 27 proteins here, 24 vegetables, a couple of different types of fat, herbs and spices. And if you take one item, chicken breast, plus asparagus, plus coconut oil, cooked in allspice, it's pretty good, pretty good. Now if we do the same thing, chicken breast, asparagus, coconut oil, basil, that's totally different than the allspice meal. And we only changed one variable, okay? You guys see where I'm going with this? Now you can get some real doozies. Mackerel cooked with daikon in lard with nutmeg. The dog might be eating that one, okay? So we've got a few things we might be pitching out. But in this little matrix, there are 80,000 different meal combinations. If you ate one of these meals per day, so you just went through the list and marched this out, it's 140 years of food variety. So when people say they're bored, they're not bored. They're just addicted to hyperpalatable food. So this was an attempt that I brought in to help people introduce enough variety so that they could stick with a new program, but not so much variety, not so much hyperpalatability that they still tended to overeat and kind of spin themselves out. So just kind of a recap, we try to obtain as many calories and nutrients as possible, and we have palate fatigue, which is baked in the cake. We get bored of things, and we need to seek out new opportunities with our food. So here's what we face today. The industrial processed foods that are designed to be eaten anywhere are attractive, durable. Oh, and all this stuff I'm citing is from a paper that I will share with you at the very end, and it is an amazing paper. I highly recommend everybody download it. It's open access. They're attractive, durable, accessible, convenient, ready to eat, ready to heat foods with a long shelf life. They are designed to be extremely palatable and can be habit forming. Ultra-processing can introduce tremendous variety into the diet. Differences in shape, flavor are distinct enough to give the eater a sense of variety that obscures the nutritional sameness. The abundant variety of a meal bypasses the brain's sensory-specific satiety, thus avoiding palate fatigue. We're able to eat foods in such a way, stacking them in sequences that even when we should be full, we're not. And I think that I'm at, oh no, we have one more slide. Stimulating, in a world of plenty, a varied diet may be maladaptive. Too much variety may be problematic for us today. And again, I'm going to talk about our modern dietetic system, medical system. This is in complete opposition to what they're telling us. They're telling us, eat less, move more, everything in moderation. And what I'm pitching here is that if you take that approach, you need luck to succeed, because it's certainly not playing to our genetics. Variety produces the dessert effect, in which a satiated eater will rekindle their appetite when presented with dessert, which is so different from the meal, from the main food, making them palatable. Okay, and so this is where I'm not sure if the audio will come through on this, but you really don't need it. Yeah.
Fueled by San Francisco's energy and support, I'm feeling fine. But then,
8-pound ice cream sundae.
what I am eating hits me. This is crazy. I am experiencing sweetness overload.
In the words of William Shakespeare, this totally sucks.
Frantic to stop the sugary tide from rising, I make a desperate play.
Can I get like a small plate of fries, something salty to break it up?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Right now, all the orange is starting to get to me. I think the more I can appreciate each bite, I got a better chance of rocking this one.
I cautiously eat a few fries. The strategy works, for now, and I resume my epic ice cream battle.
Whoa. Do you guys get what happened there? Like really, my whole talk should have just been that. It's like, just watch this and don't do this and we're done. Could have gone to the bar after this. So he had to eat a 8-pound ice cream sundae in a given amount of time to win. I don't know what he's winning, but to win. Yeah, he's winning the diabetes. What did he do when he bogged down? So what did he experience in this process? Palate fatigue. He bottomed out on his ability to eat any more of a sweet, cold, sugary substance. So what did he order? A salty, crunchy, savory item. As opposite as you could possibly get. There is a whole lexicon of food eating strategies. There are professional eaters who figure out what do you pair, it's kind of like wine pairing, only it's food pairing. What do you pair with hot dogs so that when you bog down on the hot dogs, you can continue eating them? What do you pair with ice cream? And the way that we eat today, we eat like professional eaters. The way that we structure our meals, the opportunity to have a multiplicity of palate experiences is effectively what we had to happen here. And this is in complete opposition to what the modern dietetics model typically tells us. Once your belly is full, you're done, right? He put more food down his pie hole than what he needed to, and that was the only way he could succeed. He was able to eat more food by eating more food. Do you guys see that? And this flies completely in opposition to everything we are being told. So is it any surprise that we are facing the problems that we have? It really shouldn't be, to me, if you view it through this lens. So do you remember who says the bet you can't? Lay's potato chips. Yeah, one person actually consumed some normal media. Studies in animals and humans show that an increase in consumption when there is more variety in a meal or diet. The variety, it should be noted, is based on added fat, sugar, salt, spice, shape, and texture. So what we're facing, where we're at, the modern world offers limitless food options. That's just where we are. And those food options continue to grow day by day. Food is literally engineered to be hyperpalatable. It is engineered to hit the dopaminergic centers of the brain, the same centers as cocaine, so that it makes them addictive. And you want more of that substance. Our ancient wiring is a liability. And that's something that we need to understand. If we can wrap our head around that, then it should diffuse some of that sense of guilt and failure. This is just our situation. There shouldn't be anything surprising about finding eating in this modern world challenging. And the modern recommendations of moderation fail, and they fail every damn time. This just popped up on my news feed. Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. My name is Mariana. I have type 2 diabetes and I can eat chocolate. Well, Mariana, you can eat depleted uranium if you want to. Nobody's going to stop you. But the healthcare providers, the people who are managing health, this is not particularly good advice, particularly with type 2 diabetes, which is 100% preventable and reversible. Stick this person on a low-carb diet, get them lifting some weights, exercising a little bit, it is in reverse. It is gone. Can you go back to eating the same types of foods that got you there? No. Can you manage it in a way that you show no signs or symptoms of type 2 diabetes? Yes, absolutely. Now, this one is, okay, so the American Dietetics Association put this up on their Facebook page. Did anybody see this? Yeah, a couple of people saw this. They took it down. They took it down. So this was the Satisfy Your Sweet Tooth Tuesday post by the American Diabetics Association, American Diabetes Association. Here's the recipe for this. 1 can of sweetened condensed milk, 1 cup of white rice, cook those together, add 2 tablespoons of sugar, Add some cinnamon because it improves insulin sensitivity. There was so much outcry over this that they finally took it down, and they did a reasonable job of kind of backpedaling. They're like, we didn't provide any context, portions, and whatnot. But, I mean, for me, I have very poor insulin sensitivity. I react to carbohydrates pretty poorly. A tablespoon of that is the safe dose for me. If I had a half a cup of that, my blood sugar is going to be 200. That's just the way I'm wired up. That's the genetic lottery I pulled. These are the people looking out for us. And these are the people saying, eat less, move more, everything in moderation. And the one thing that I've seen, and I apologize if there are dietitians in the audience, but the dietetics scene is promulgating this idea that the only disordered eating is limiting food options. You can show up at work or school or whatever part of your life and have as junky a food as you could possibly imagine. That's not a problem. But if you decide to be vegan or paleo or Atkins or low carb or Mediterranean or whatever, that is considered orthorexia, disordered eating. So the standard dietetics models have a little bit of everything, exclude nothing. Every single study to date, which has compared that head-to-head, and if you guys would like links to the compilation I have of all those studies comparing eat everything in moderation versus limiting more food options. Again, whether it's paleo or vegan, what have you, I'm happy to share those with you. But it fails every single time. Excluding food groups, is it really orthorexia? Is it disordered eating? I would argue that some degree of food avoidance is absolutely necessary for us to be successful today. Unless you were that rare person. Does anybody know Gretchen Rubin, Better Than Before? Really great behavior change gal. She has some tests that you can assess yourself. Are you a moderator? Are you an abstainer? Abstainers just need to completely stay away from things. Moderators can have a little bit. When she did some surveys, dietitians are about 95% moderators. Massively disproportionate relative to a 50-50 distribution of moderators and abstainers in the population. So you have a population of people that is almost exclusively psychologically wired to be moderators, and they are telling everybody else that they need to be like them, and they need to use the approach that they have. So it's going to fail half the population out of the gate. And then even within that, I can totally moderate sweet stuff. I could really take or leave sweet stuff. Salty, crunchy stuff, whole different story. So that's a other piece of this. And I just love the bet you can't. You see how they get the snake in there, like the Adam and Eve, first sin and all that. They play off this all the time. I love this quote, complete abstinence is easier than perfect moderation. Super true. It is incredibly controversial to suggest this stuff within medical circles. Again, it's labeled as disordered eating. It's put forward that you're going to create disordered eating. Is absolutely not true. Eating disorder experts are crystal clear on the fact that disordered eating will find places for people to go. The places that people go is not what is creating that problem. Palate fatigue and simple meals are the foundation of our omnivore past, and they are requisite to maintaining normal health today. It's what we've got to do. Orthorexia effectively limits palate options. So again, I'm kind of the paleo guy, right? I don't care what you do, whether it's paleo or vegan or Mediterranean or macrobiotic. If you want to be successful, you've got to get out of that system, and you've got to get to a situation in which you are limiting palate options to the degree it works for you. I don't know what that is, but I just know that there's a place that you can be and that your clients can be that this will all work. I would take that bet all day long. I will bet most people, if they get into the eat less, move more, everything in moderation deal, and they've got stuff like potato chips and Kit Kats and all the rest of that are just willy-nilly around them, are they going to succeed? No way. I don't know if you guys know this, just quick digression. Warren Buffett, one of the most wealthy people in the world, so he's a major owner in Coca-Cola. He also owns 60% of the dialysis centers in the United States. Dialysis centers have been growing at an exponential rate. Kidney failure is completely reversible with some sort of a low-carb diet kind of deal. But he's brilliant. He has created horizontal and vertical integration of his systems. Create the diabetes, treat the diabetes. So what the heck can we do? What the heck can we do? Recognize the omnivore's dilemma. Recognize that we are wired to eat more and move less. This is what's baked in the cake. This is the way that we are wired up. Tame novelty with simple foods. So again, whatever eating strategy you pick, figure out those things that are triggers for you, and you're going to have to avoid them if you want to be successful. Again, I can have some dark chocolate in the house, and I'll eat a piece every couple of weeks. If I have a bag of potato chips in the house, it is gone, like before I get in the house. So I plan according to that. That food matrix is really, really useful, and you can download it at robbwolf.com/food matrix. Super easy to find. Avoid professional eating strategies. If you're stacking multi-course meals, and again, Thanksgiving, holidays, yeah, kick your heels up, have some fun. But every single day is not like crystal chandeliers, the angels singing kind of deal. Sometimes we just get down and have some simple meals day to day. Factors governing our appetite and health, clearly food, largely unprocessed, appropriate carbohydrate load. In our modern environment, because of gut dysbiosis and other kind of systemic inflammatory issues, the carbs are really kind of the control rod for making things work for people. Non-immunogenic, I tend to recommend that people do some sort of an elimination diet. Grains, legumes, and dairy is a really good place to start for 30 days, reintroduce, see how you do. Immunogenic foods can cause systemic inflammation, so I recommend that people play with that. Sleep and photoperiod is possibly the most important part of this, and I'll talk more in a minute. And then community. An inadequate community is now as big an impact on health and survival as a pack-a-day smoking habit. So we have to figure out how to get reconnected with people. And that also plays into our ability to be healthier. So I have a 30-day reset, whole, largely unprocessed foods. Again, I don't care what you do. Paleo, vegan, macrobiotic, just pick something and go for it. Try to make the macronutrients look something like getting a decent amount of protein, about 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That usually is about 4 ounces of protein, or if you're doing more legumes, a pretty good helping of legume and some other protein-dense items. Low glycemic load carbs, fruits, veggies, root shoots, and tubers. Things like lentils and kidney beans, if you tolerate those, because they're very low glycemic load. Don't fear fat. Nuts, seeds, avocado, even butter. Avoid frankenfats, the modern seed oils. And simple meals eat to satiety, and it's really easy to eat to satiety on simple meals. And that's part of the challenge. People who have kind of broken this neuroregulation of appetite, they may find these simple meals to be really underwhelming for them. It's just not spinning that dopamine center of the brain initially, and it can be really challenging for them to get on board with that. So you drink more coffee, and hopefully we can wallpaper over that problem. Sleep is huge. Even though I'm the food guy, about 70% of my talks now relate to sleep. Most of what I talk to Naval Special Warfare and the Navy SEALs and the Special Boat Team members relate to sleep. Super short deal. Go to bed early, dim the lights, wear some blue blockers. Blue blockers were actually sued because people were wearing them while driving and falling asleep at the wheel. They work. They work. It's no joke. But our circadian rhythms have been disordered. The amount of light that we get has changed, possibly even more than our food system has, and I would argue maybe an even bigger factor in our health. If you are underslept, or if your circadian rhythm is shifted, you will eat more food, and you will tend to eat more bad food. So go to sleep early, pitch black room. When I say pitch black room, does that mean that like the fire alarm deal, is that okay? No, all of it, pitch black. A little glop of tape on that, so yeah, make it a pitch black room. Community, like I said, inadequate social connection is a huge factor in health. Volunteer work, joining something like CrossFit, yoga, martial arts, hiking groups. Again, whatever it is that gets you out, and if you can tick multiple boxes, if you can exercise and get outside and have community, then we're getting a lot of stuff done. We're doing things in a pretty efficient fashion. Movement, again, anything, the most important movement for you to do is the movement you're gonna stick with. CrossFit, movement, yoga, dance, martial arts. I really, really like martial arts classes because there's a great sense of community, really complex motor patterns that you're learning. There's a huge variety of martial arts that folks can do, so I recommend checking some of that out. And I just encourage you, both individually and with your clients, remind them it's not about morality or stupidity or laziness. This is all about novelty. And it's been a huge honor being here. That's the paper that I pulled most of this stuff from, and I think I have time for questions. Okay, thank you. Huge honor being here. I'm going to do it.
All right, over here.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Your Paleo Solution book was the first one I ever read after I got diagnosed with a whole bunch of health stuff. And my doctors had said, oh, it doesn't matter what you eat. And I read your book, and I was just like dancing around. So
Awesome.
thank you so much.
The soundtrack is pretty good with that book, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, what about intermittent fasting? There's a lot about that, and bulletproof coffee, and collagen, and MCT oil, and all these things, you know, that are
That's like 30 questions, my dear.
novelty
Which-
kind of thing. So I wondered where you stand on that.
I think intermittent fasting is, all of these things are tools. Whether it's a high-carb diet, low-carb diet, intermittent fasting, they're all tools. It's funny when you talk to engineers and contractors, there's no debate about using a handsaw versus a screwdriver, right? But then we get into medical situations and, well, high-carb diets are terrible and low-carb diets will kill you and shut down you're like, they're just tools. And so for a person who is not under a ton of stress, who is kind of navigating their life reasonably well, I think something like make your dinner happen at 5 o'clock, fast until 8 or 9 a.m., then eat at that point. You've got a 16 to 18-hour fast. That's great. And then maybe once or twice a year, maybe you do a 3-day fast. I can see no big downsides to that. But if you've got a type A person, now the people who usually will do intermittent fasting are the CrossFit Games competitor who eats 2 grams of carbs a week, trains 6 times a day. Like, they're already so extreme that they're like, man, yeah, give me the next extreme thing to do, and then they layer it on. So it's always a really important context-related story. If we have a laid-back computer programmer that's kind of sedentary, man, they can do some intermittent fasting, and it's probably going to be great for them. Similar to something like the bulletproof coffee, where their best productivity is in the morning. They don't want to burn a lot of time eating food and fixing breakfast. They get up, make some coffee, spin some butter and MCT oil in there, shoot it down. Then they don't really eat a solid meal until lunch. But again, it's a pretty context-specific story, and I see that the extreme people are the ones that add that next extreme thing to the mix. Yeah. So it's always context-driven. And this is maybe something for y'all, particularly on the health coach and medical side. Who are you talking to? What do they want to do? And what that provides is a map. You know where they are, you know where they want to go. And then we can start building a process to that. But great question. Another one, or does everybody want a bathroom break now?
Got you right here, man. Here you go.
Oh, no, it's on stage. Yes. I reached my 90th birthday in March.
Congratulations.
But this is the downer part. I've been sick ever since. And all my life, growing up as an ordinary person, I was always a foodie. I mean, I always thought I shouldn't put a lot in my body. I didn't like medicine. I didn't really like doctors very much, so I kind of stayed away from all that. And when I fell up the stairs one time and ripped open my leg. My legs are a mess. I wouldn't let anybody even look at them. I'm so torn up from falling. But I've always fallen. And I always kind of rolled and got back up. Didn't hurt myself very much. But on this particular night, and I fell up the stairs, and they called at 911, and 2 huge guys came out, and they said, what do we do with her? And said, should we pick her up? I said, pick her up, just carry her. So they did that, and, you know, put my arms around their neck. It was huge. Got in the car, and he said, asked me all the questions about my health. And he said, what meds are you on? I said, no meds. Hey, she's 87, no meds. I couldn't believe it. But that's been, so all that put together, and here I am now. I've got everything since I turned 90, and had this glorious birthday, and I thought it was in heaven. Maybe I was, and fell. But anyway, so that's what's happening now. Oh, so let's get practical. It's all about me. I want to know what you think, because I've picked up a lot of what you said. My son-in-law is on the paleo diet, has been for a long time.
So clearly he has no good quality control. Or
He's
standards.
fantastic, the
Okay.
guy. He's fantastic. And he said, you know, when I was doing all these things, he was just standing quietly by, and we bought our meat together. We got the, you know, all the good meat from the half a cow and all that stuff together. Anyway, so then I said, okay, I'm falling apart. I don't know what's happening. So then I read about Whole30. That made sense to me. And then my family, I was planning on starting it after I'm going to a dinner party, and I thought, because I know you have to go the whole route, not interrupt it. So I'm planning to start it on the 6th of November. And all of my family gathering around talking about me, that's what they do all the time. And I just know that. It's just awful. I'm not paranoid. What's she doing now? You know, so.
So you're wondering if Whole30 is a good option?
Yes.
It's a fantastic option. Yeah, easy day. Easy day. Yeah.
They said
Longest question, shortest answer of the day, for sure.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
it. I'm glad to hear, because they said you'll kill yourself. That's a crazy diet.
No, it's fantastic. Whole30 is kind of a paleo approach, but they give you some very tight lane lines to work within. I'm a little more, I provide some gray area. They give you some really tight lane lines. They provide some training wheels. And it's interesting because people will criticize them because the training wheels are somewhat arbitrary, but when you're trying to teach people how to eat, what's right, what's wrong, I mean, you got to draw some lines somewhere, and heuristics. Heuristic is trying to take a big concept and provide a simple solution with it, and Whole30 has done a really good job with that. They're like, stay in this lane line, do it for 30 days, don't ask any questions, and people succeed like crazy. Then when they pop out the other side, then it's like, okay, now we start asking some questions. How do you do with dairy? Reintroduce some gluten. How do you do with that? And we start playing with some stuff. But they give you some really clear lane lines to play within so that you can get some success, get healthy. 'Cause again, my crazy thing is let's get people healthy. Then we can pull them back and say, okay, how much latitude do we have? What can they get away with? And that seems very honest and transparent, but let's at least get them healthy first, and then we can start playing with the details from there. So yeah, Whole30 is great. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Sarah, and I have two kids. They're 12 and 14, and find that we are often struggling with the influences from the big outside world at sporting events, church, every party we go to, you name it. And I try to be the mom who is not the complainer, but making nice suggestions about, you know, maybe not feeding the swim team donuts every Friday as a treat at the end of the week. And I will take any advice or help or thoughts that you have on how to do that as best possible.
I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and so I'm just heading into that process. And I'm trying to strike a balance between helping to enlighten people and not being that annoying prick that is always bothering folks. And I don't have a good answer with that. You know, like my oldest daughter goes to a Montessori school. They're aware of gluten-free stuff, but they still do a lot of gluten-related things in the kitchen and whatnot. And then this last year, my wife and I said, hey, we will purchase all the raw materials so that your macaroni and cheese and this and that and the other is gluten-free. Now, we caught them too late in the cycle, but for them, it's kind of like, oh, like they do this thing as a for-profit deal. So if all of a sudden the stuff shows up free, they're stoked, and they're like, next year we'll do it. So not everybody has capacity to do that, but you just try to, again, like you have to strike a balance with that. I don't have a good answer to it at all, and a lot of it you'll just kind of, neither one of our girls appear to be gluten sensitive the way that I am, but I didn't start that way. I was always kind of low grade, and then I caught Giardia while traveling in Central America, and that's when things got really bad. So we're just trying to limit their exposure. If we end up at a birthday party where there's gluten cupcakes and we didn't think to bring a gluten-free cupcake, then we just roll with it, and they seem to be okay so far. So we just try to not be super annoying with it. I'm glad we had kids now versus 10 years ago because I would have been a nutcase 10 years ago. So, yeah.
I have a question. So what's the latest on gluten allergy versus glyphosate allergy? Which is it? What's happening?
So have folks heard about that? So there's glyphosate, which is Roundup, and that is applied to all kinds of different agricultural products. And so we have celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition that causes an attack to the intestinal lining. There's this non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And then there's this thought that glyphosate may be causing damage to the mitochondria in our bodies and specifically to the epithelial cells in the gut, and that may be the problem. And it's a really compelling mechanism. It fits the epidemiological data, but we still have some work to figure some of that stuff out. But glyphosate in California was just deemed a carcinogen. It disrupts it's just so bad. It is so bad. I'm a huge supporter of the Savory Institute, the regenerative agriculture. The only kind of fundraising that I do is for the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. Highly recommend everybody in this room join the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. It doesn't matter if you're paleo or vegan or what have you. Whatever type of food you want to eat, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund are the folks that protect your ability to access that food. If you like raw dairy and your raw dairy provider up the street gets invaded by the feds, these are the people that will go defend them. So I highly recommend that you support the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. And to your question, these folks are the kind of spearhead trying to get the glyphosate Roundup, like the issue with bee populations plummeting. These are some of the primary people tackling all that. And again, they are non-denominational as far as what type of food you eat. If you want to eat food that's good, they're the ones defending it. And virtually nobody else is doing that.
Any other questions?
It's not really a question, but have you read Dr. John Douillard's Eat Wheat?
I've seen it,
Read
and
it.
I'm intrigued.
And
yeah.
Everybody read it. It's on target with. It's not that we're designed to eat wheat and meat, just not in moderation, but it's seasonally.
Right.
So I mean,
Right.
It's an awesome book. It comes out in full form in January, but you can buy it online right now for 99 cents as an ebook.
Right. Yeah, I've seen it. It's on the list of things
Yeah.
to pull in. Yeah.
It answers a lot of these questions.
Nice. Nice.
Hi, just a question on the question back about how do we handle when we're away? What do you think about the 90-10 rule where you just, for fellowship reasons, you just allow things to happen in the 10% of the time and just at home and everything, you avoid it? Is that a problem with, the exposure to those?
Totally depends. Totally depends. It's a great question. So the question is, what about this 90-10 rule? How do you navigate that? Like if you're out with friends and family and everything, do you want to be that annoying person? So for me, again, like the gluten exposure deal, and this is where I'm fascinated to read this, like if I just eat a piece of fish that is grilled on a grill that had French bread grilled on it 2 days before, I'm destroying the bathroom. And I have a very unfavorable experience. So for me, it's I don't care who I'm going to offend. Like, I just don't eat it, or I eat before, or something like that. If you are a person for whom salty, crunchy food, say like you've had health problems and you're really trying to change things, and salty, crunchy food is the trigger for you, then maybe you don't do that and you draw this hard line in the sand. There are certain people who are alcoholics who reach a point where they can have a drink and they're good. 2 drinks, it doesn't work. There are other people for whom any amount of alcohol is not an option. So even when they do tinctures and stuff, it has to be glycerol and not alcohol. So, the big challenge is we try to get these simple stories, these heuristics, to reach as many people as possible, but then it fails 20 or 30% of us because we don't fit into that generalized story. And that's the challenge. That's the constant challenge that I have. And a really big challenge is that these big picture heuristics get turned into religious dogma. It becomes the way to do things instead of it providing a roadmap through the forest, not the roadmap through the forest, and then we can discover things. And we have one question up front. I have no idea where my...
right here.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson and her Bright Line Eating? It's a no sugar, no flour because of the addictive properties of sugar and flour for some people. She has like a susceptibility scale for addiction to food.
Say that name again.
Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, and her company is Bright Line Eating.
Bright Line Eating. I am not familiar with it, but it sounds totally on point just from that. Yeah. I think. Oh.
When you say like going back to like the different cultures and what they eat, I guess because like with my ancestors, I have like 20 different countries rooting back, and people have lived in like, I have a lot in Canada and here, and some are like, where would I start for people, especially in this big melting pot?
That's a good question. So when I pull from that ancestral model, mainly I use it to make the point that it's very difficult to make an argument that humans only ate a high-carb diet or only ate a low-carb diet and were successful. We have examples of both extremes, and people are quite healthy until we start getting modern processed foods. And a lot of Weston A. Price's work really illustrates that beautifully. The ancestral model, though, although informative, and this is one of the challenges for me, I'm like the paleo diet guy, but we just understand so much better now. Our genetics don't necessarily need to change for there to be problems or benefit. Epigenetics, the way our genes get turned on and off, the photoperiod, our food, our gut microbiome, those are way more important than most of the genetics that we have. The way that we turn that signaling on and off is really the big deal, and that's where just experimentation becomes the rule of the day. You've got to get in and play with it. I did some 23andMe genetic testing, and based off that, there was one line in it that said that I was 300% more likely than average to develop type 2 diabetes. I am super carb intolerant in general. Both my parents developed type 2 diabetes in their 30s, okay? So this was pretty good, and so it's supportive, but usually if you start in and you do some sort of a whole foods diet and you start on the lower carb side of things and you see how you do and you're like, man, I feel like hell, then you titrate the carbs up and then you start playing with the types of carbs. And then somebody mentioned seasonality. There's a huge seasonal element to this too. We shouldn't be eating the same thing day in, day out. Globalization is really amazing in some ways in that it's great for trade and we can get coconuts and all kinds of stuff, but now we can eat watermelon and grapes in December while we live in Maine. And that maybe genetically isn't the way we're wired up. Maybe we should have periods of high carb and low carb and a variety of food exposures, whereas now we tend to stick within about 10 or 15 main foods that we eat again and again, which limits the nutrient options. It increases the, some kind of food sensitivity issues, like eating eggs constantly and all that type of stuff. So hopefully that answered the question a little bit. I mean, you just got to get in and experiment a little bit. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
How you doing, man? What are your thoughts, some of the criticisms, old and still around, about the paleo? And I know it's based on individuals, like if you're an athlete, obviously there's a higher need. But one of the criticisms has always been that there's too much of a focus on protein, higher levels of protein versus a more moderate, maybe higher fat, like maybe the bulletproof or even a ketogenic is specific. But what are your thoughts on that, protein intake on something like paleo?
Well, the literature that describes a paleo diet, Lauren Cordain and Boyd Eaton really did some great work on that. They, again, show protein intakes that were as low as 10% and as high as 60 or 70% at various times of the year. So I've always couched it as paleo is macronutrient agnostic. It really focuses on food quality, and then you play with those ratios. I tend to eat kind of on the ketogenic side of things myself, but with kind of paleo-esque foods. But I also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is this old guy wrestling deal. I have no idea why I do it. I get the shit kicked out of me all the time. But for some reason, the hook has sunk in deep, and I need a little bit more carbs to fuel that. And I've found that lentils are a really good option for me because they're a lower glycemic load raise my blood sugar less, so I use those post-workout, and that is certainly not a paleo food, but this is where you use the template as a beginning point, and then you modify from there. And all the way from ketogenic all the way up to Ketovan, which is like, the Ketovan diet was 10% protein, 70% carbs, the remainder was fat, and all the fat was saturated fat, and that's where the Ketavans are so cool. The Ketovan diet should piss everybody off, because the low-carb jihadis say that the high carbs should, all these people should have diabetes. None of them have diabetes. The Forks Over Knives, T. Colin Campbell group should say that all these people have cancer because they eat animal products. The main animal product they eat is pork. The American Heart Association folks would say that their primary fat being saturated fat, everybody should have cardiovascular disease and atherosclerosis. They have none of that. So it's one diet that everybody should be mad about, and these people are perfectly healthy. So again, the one thing that seems to be consistent, they don't eat processed foods, and they don't have enormous amounts of palate options. So this is where we just have to get in and figure out what our individual needs are, and take like an ancestral model, and then use what we know about exercise physiology and biochemistry and metabolism to hone that in. The ancestral model is amazing for asking questions. And I would argue that all the questions we're asking in medicine currently are the wrong questions. We're not even asking the right questions, because it's not couched in an evolutionary biology ancestral health model, but it does not provide answers. That's what the rest of the scientific method, biochemistry, pathology is for. So when people try to hang their hat on the ancestral model, I would say that's pseudoscience, and I'm the paleo guy. But I use this to begin the process, not to end the process. Huge honor being here. Thank you, guys.